Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Spyderco Atlantic Salt in the green and LC200N. I'll be linking this guy right down below. If you're watching this video, I know there'll be a few people going, should I go with the LC200N or should I go with the standard in H1? They're $20 there. This one, LC200N, which we'll talk about, is definitely a better all-around steel. So if that's what you're wondering, I'll just let you know right now. Thank you so much to OCD for EDC for sending this in for review. Check him out on YouTube and Instagram. It's absolutely because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thanks so much for supporting me. There's a link for Patreon right down below. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. All right, let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. So the overall length of the Atlantic Salt coming in at 8 1/4 inches. With a 3.6 inch blade and about it's like maybe 3 1/4 on the cutting edge, a little shy of 3 1/4 on the cutting edge. Let's go ahead and do size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Rat Model 2. So you can see here, it is definitely a full-size knife. Not quite the same length as the Rat 1, but close. Definitely larger than the Rat 2. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it's almost exactly the same length as the PM2 with very similar ergonomic lines, oddly similar, and definitely longer than the Para 3, though I'll point out the cutting edge on the, well, it's close. It's almost exactly the same, maybe a little bit longer cutting edge than the Spyderco PM2. Last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and its little brother, the Mini Griptilian. So you can see here, definitely about the same, and a little longer than the Ritter Hogue. So it's a full-size knife, for sure. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here, it's not thick. In fact, it's actually quite a bit thinner than the Para 3. How about length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3? You can see here, lengthwise, it's actually a little bit shorter than the PM2. It's definitely longer than the Para 3. Height-wise, it definitely has that big hump. In fact, it's actually a little bit taller. Yeah, it's actually a little bit taller than both the PM2 and Para 3. So that's something to keep in mind. So materials here, we're looking at the injection mold plastic. We're looking at, curiously, what I believe to be a titanium pocket clip. And, you know, the idea here with the Atlantic Salt is that it's meant to be used in the ocean. So while there are some steel parts, they are heavily coated. Most of this are materials that cannot corrode, including LC200N, what seems to be a titanium clip, or at least a clip made out of something that is not going to corrode. I'm going to guess, right, because it's non-magnetic. So yeah, that's the idea here, is to reduce the amount of parts that can actually corrode and maximize on the non-corrosive elements, right? So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. And it's not like you can only enjoy this knife if you work in or around the ocean. No, I mean, this is kind of, it's one of those knives where it's like, you just don't have to worry as much about maintenance in general. So that's going to be appealing, I think, to a lot of people. It's also because there is a, you know, just there's so few steel parts on this. Everything about this knife just screams lightweight for how much knife you're getting. 2.33 ounces. Yeah, that's definitely what I consider to be ultra lightweight on this channel. So I think that's great. I think, you know, ratios are good. That's going to make a lot of people happy. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. Get out my tools. You can absolutely get my tools down in the description. Very inexpensive, very recommendable. So a couple of interesting things here. I believe the pivot's going to be a T8. Yeah, T8 pivot. T6 on the body screw up here. This is, you're going to you need a long, flat, a long, thick flathead. It's weird how they've done that. I believe that piece is also titanium, which is It's going to be soft. You're probably going to have to be careful that it's kind of weird. But I was talking with Eugene Kwan about this, and I was joking. I was like, I'm going to quote you and send people your way. He guessed, he doesn't know for sure, that the idea is that if you're going to adjust or need to switch the pocket clip or take it off, that you would, it's more likely if you're working on a boat or in the ocean that you'll have some other tool, more like a flathead screwdriver, that would be more readily available than a set of Torx bits, which makes sense. So, all right. I wish it was something that was easier to get at, right? Because this is an ambidextrous knife. So if left-handed people want to carry this, it comes from the factory in this position. You'd want to switch it over to this side. That's great that you can do that, but you're going to need one for each side. Whatever it is that you're using, you're going to need one for each side. So I don't know if I really agree with it. I kind of get it, but I'm also kind of like, but it's harder to, adjust and switch. So, okay, it is what it is, right? So there you go. The inside of this knife is as you would expect. You can get my flashlight down below too. It's all, injection mold plastic, except for for whatever reason, they didn't coat one part of that. You can see back there, it's just raw steel. So that one area is still going to be exposed steel, but the steel that they use is likely stainless, right? Very stainless. So you're probably not going to have much of an issue with this knife in and around water, even salt water, which is really cool. That's why they call it the Atlantic Salt. Have we covered everything there? Yeah, I think we have. So this is a lockback, and it operates exactly like you'd expect. It's nice and smooth. It's not going to be the most fidgety thing, but you can, if you get it just right, you can do the reverse flick. I don't know how much that really matters. Two-handed opening. It's very easy to simply one-hand open this knife, and I like that. The lockback itself is also very comfortable. Edges not necessarily knocked down, but that little divot there makes it really easy to engage and disengage, and it does that readily without any stick, at least on this guy. So I like that. Ergonomically, it's also very comfortable. There's a choke-up position with a nice ramp back here and some jimping. It's really nice. The pocket clip is super long. That makes sense as well. I mean, something that I would imagine, I don't work on a boat, but I would imagine if I was going to be in and out, jumping in and out of the water right all the time, I would want a clip that is going to secure the knife very well in my pocket. So maybe a longer clip does make more sense for this. You can feel it. It's not like, oh my gosh, it's an ergonomic disaster, but you can feel it. Definitely. It's got that sort of typical Spyderco spoon shape to it, and it carries relatively deep it's not really deep, but you'd also want to be able to readily get at it. This is one of those where it's throwing off my usual reviewer senses, because this was made very specifically for people who need a pocket knife, who work in and around the ocean, right? And then as a secondary, anybody who just doesn't want to deal with the maintenance that comes along with a composition or just the total construction of the knife, where you'd have to generally consider corrosion resistance, right? So yeah, I'm kind of gonna, normally I'd nitpick that and be like, why is the clip so long? Why, it's blah, this or that. It's being prioritized, or the lanyard hole is being prioritized over the clip. I'm gonna kind of give that a pass, because in this situation, yeah, you might want a longer clip. You might want a lanyard, the lanyard hole to actually be prioritized. The lanyard's actually going to make a lot more sense, when you're using this knife in the setting that it was meant to be used in. So, okay. But yeah, this has I think, what do they call it? The volcano pattern? Yeah, I think they call it the volcano pattern. It's just a bunch of squares. Yeah, I actually like this. I like this better than the multi-directional. I mean, aesthetically, it functions just the same. It's plenty grippy. This is not a knife you're going to drop. You're locked into it. Comfortable back here, comfortable up here, or comfortable enough considering where the clip is, right? It's nice. Honestly, I can see me in Kansas, using a knife like this. It's kind of nice. Like, I don't really have to worry about corrosion resistance that much, but I really like how this knife feels in the hand, and I like the idea of it. There's a bunch of things that I like here. So I know that there's going to be a lot more people that, you might think, oh, well, that knife's not really for me because I don't work in and around the ocean. No, there's a lot of things that make this knife great for almost anybody, right? It's lightweight, almost corrosion proof, right? And it's plenty ergonomic, easy to manipulate. It's ambidextrous, completely and totally ambidextrous, right? There's a lot of good stuff here. It has that Spyderco thing right there, which is basically the landing zone for the clip. You can see there the clip is resting right on top of it, so it makes it a little easier to get in and out of the pocket, but you are going to be dealing with some rough spots because of the texturing, so just expect to deal with that. The like I said, the blade is LC200N, which is great. LC200N is a great steel for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, it's basically impossible, to get any corrosion or anything on the blade. Edge retention's decent. It's going to be very easy to sharpen up. This is a way better steel than H1. H1 is mashed potatoes compared to this. Much, much better. There aren't a lot of knives that I wouldn't take LC200N in. I think that's great, especially considering the price in this guy. I'm really happy with that. Edges, inside the hole, a little bit sharp. Edges up here, corners, kind of sharp, right? The cutting edge is fantastic. It does get fairly thin, and I like this nose. I kind of really like edges like this for EDC, just like the straight edge. Not going to be one you can lay down perfectly flat because of how they've done this area right here. But yeah, you can get your draw cuts in, things like that. This would be a good EDC blade shape. It's not going to be perfect for every circumstance, but yeah, it's going to be good. And the tip, which is pretty much non-existent, this whole area is going to be fairly strong. There's quite a bit of material out here, so you don't really need to worry too much about snapping the blade, but then again, consider what you're using the knife for and whether or not you should actually be using a different tool, right? Yeah, like I said, all of the parts that are steel or could potentially corrode have been coated, heavily coated. So unless you're really throwing this around or grinding it into stuff, trying to get that coating to wear off, you probably won't need to worry about that too much. This area right here is I think they call it a shackle key. I had to watch another video on that. So it's meant to assist in adjusting the bolts on shackle bolts. You would essentially fit that in there and kind of move it down until you've got enough tension and then turn it. I obviously am not familiar with that type of thing at all because I don't work on a boat, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to work in and around the ocean to understand why that might be useful, but it's going to be very specific. The nice thing here is that for people who don't need that or don't care about it, it's not really hurting anything. It's just there, right? So some people might go, oh, it's kind of an eyesore. Well, okay, but functionally, it really doesn't make any difference whatsoever. So it's just there. Lockup on this guy, completely and totally solid, as you would expect. Centering is also dead on. So that's great. These are made in Seki City, Japan. So same places like the Endura, Endella, right? Dragonfly, knives like that. This is a cool knife. I'm drawn to it because it's green. I think the green looks cool. I love the ergonomic lines. This is a Sal Glesser design, by the way. I love the blade shape. I love how easy it is for a lockback to, manipulate. It's not going to be the most fidgety thing in the world. But I like that. I like the usable cutting edge, the size, the weight, the balance. I like the choke up position. Yeah, this is really cool. I'm honestly pretty on board with the price. I think this is one of the most affordable LC200N knives in existence at $122. The standard version of this knife coming in H1 for $102. Yeah, it's worth spending an extra $20 to get. In fact, I don't know why they still do the one in H1. This is cool. I think there's a lot of reasons beyond just, working in and around the ocean that somebody might like this knife. Some people are going to find that the pocket clip is just a little excessive, but talk about a good knife for just as long as you can legally carry it, because the blade length is going to make it illegal in some places, but just a good straightforward knife that has basically no need for excessive maintenance or cleaning or anything. You just use it and put it back in your pocket and you're good, right? Wipe off any adhesive that's stuck to it, but whatever. I mean, nothing's going to the blade's not going to stain, or you're not going to have to worry, if I use it in this environment, is it going to like lock up or seize up on me to the point where I can't? No, it's going to be fine. This is a nice, durable, straightforward knife, and I think a lot of people would really like this. This is another reason I like this knife. I have a lot of friends who really, like, when they use a pocket knife, they just throw them around. They'll leave them in, containers that will get wet or get dirty or gross, and all of their knives look the same, right? Their pocket knives end up in the bottom of their tool bag or their toolbox or some container that gets all gross and muddy and dirty. And it just ends up being this rusty pile of crap that they're like, oh, I keep it around in case I need to cut something open, And obviously it's kind of flopping around because it's usually a cheapie, but the blade's always just corroded and eaten up because they just don't, for a lot of people, they just don't care too much about that. They don't think about doing maintenance because a knife is a knife. They have no idea that there's different blade materials and different tiers. So while this is going to be really expensive for people like that, if you have a friend that throws their knife really, like, not necessarily as like trying to pry with their knife, or if they really generally mistreat knives, or they get them really dirty and they don't clean them, and you want to get them a nice gift, I think this would do really, really well. And it's also a lock type that most people are going to know how to manipulate, right? It's going to be kind of self-explanatory. So I think this knife appeals to so many different types of people. I mean, such a wide variety of people. People who are enthusiasts, people who are, you know, really need a very specific, almost like niche tool to use, you know, for their occupation, or people who don't know about any of that and just kind of treat knives as throw around whatever, just end up kind of wherever kind of thing. That'd be an expensive gift, but gosh, it'll work. This is extremely recommendable. I really like this knife, and it's so not what I normally like. Normally I'm like, no, I don't FRN, it's so weird looking, and I don't really like lockbacks because I like the fidgety kind of knife. But no, just about every last little detail of this knife makes sense. This was it's so funny how specifically this was made, and like for such a specific audience, but it also caters to such a wide variety of people. This is really cool. I think it's a good price, very recommendable. I'm going to be putting this knife in 2 playlists, my most recommended knives and my Spyderco knives playlist. So yeah, if you think you might have a place for this in your life, or somebody else, you know, absolutely, super recommendable. This is a really, really good knife, and I'm really happy I got an opportunity to check this out. Like I said, this will be linked right down below. Ignore the H1 model and go with the LC200N model. It's much, much better. Thanks again to OCD for EDC for sending this in for review. I really appreciate that. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.